Okay, welcome back, everybody. It's William and Steve again, and today we want to talk about acceptance. So let's give an example of what we mean, because this word could mean lots of different things.
True.
If someone gets angry at me because I didn't take the trash out on time, and now
That's so
the
funny. That's the exact same thought that came to my head of what I was like, as you were saying it, I was like, oh, what example to give? Oh yeah, someone got angry. Like when you said angry, I was like, oh yeah, I didn't take the trash out. And then you said it, and I was like, no. That's so funny.
so we've talked about expectations before. That's
Yeah,
an example of not meeting someone's
yeah,
expectation.
yeah. If someone gets
Um,
angry at you for doing it, you have to just accept. I guess there's multiple things in that example,
sure.
like accepting that actually you probably should have done it, and then go do it. If it's your role, if you've said you want to do it or something, and then that maybe their anger is actually justified, and so you just have to accept that that's that response, um, and not have an emotional response to it. So accept so don't get angry back. Accept that they're being angry, and it's not going to help if you get angry.
Okay.
And then
This is already getting more complex than I
this whole
anticipated.
yeah, sorry,
Let's try to keep it simple by
keep it
saying,
simple, keep it
uh,
simple. Sorry.
so let's ignore the other person's
Okay, yeah,
complex and,
yep, yep,
and
yep.
perspective. Just I did something wrong in quotation marks for our listeners. I'm doing quotation
Yep.
marks. um, so something went wrong and I feel bad. Let's stick with that.
Yep, that's good. That is very good. Much simpler, much better. I appreciate that.
How do I handle that situation? Now, there's an exterior world and an interior world, right? Something went wrong in the exterior world, something having to do with bins and garbage. Doesn't really matter what it was.
Yeah.
So I could, well, the first instinct for me and for most people is I need to change the exterior to make it fit with my view of what is right. Okay, so in this example, I'm going to set a reminder on my phone to make sure that next time I remember to put the bin out. That's a very benign thing to do. Sometimes the thing we do to correct the exterior situation is to hurt the person that we give fault, sometimes ourselves.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, whenever we want to hurt someone else, we hurt ourselves. We kind of mentioned that in the last episode about anger.
Yeah. We damage. Yeah.
So that's the materialistic worldview strategy, I would say,
Yeah.
where
To change the external, but actually, as you
where the
say,
external
yeah.
cause, so perceived cause of our discomfort needs to change. And so when we give someone else the fault for that, then we think they must change. If they won't change, then we feel we must break up or we must distance ourselves from them. Anyway, but this situation must never happen again because it has caused me this pain,
Yep.
and that has to stop.
Yes. Again, that could be
That's
guilt.
the
That could be
external
yeah.
materialistic naive perspective. The
Yep.
the other perspective where you take responsibility is the internal one, where you try to become aware of what just happened inside of me that I feel this pain. And yeah, do you want to take it from there?
Yeah. So your response again can be again the guilt, the feeling that you've disappointed someone. You could be angry. You could be angry that they're telling you what to do. There's a whole array of internal situations that could go on, and most of them, I think, as naturally as a human, will be a negative, will be a damaging response. Like even if you went, like even if your head that you actually didn't care, like you went, yeah, in your mind you're like, oh, I did it on purpose just to annoy you because you keep telling me what to do. Because that happens, if someone has told you, oh, go take out the bins, then like earlier on they were telling you to clean up the house or something. Your response in your inside internally might just be, well, I'm gonna keep not doing it just to annoy you because you keep telling me what to do. And it's like all these different things are just going to perpetuate unhappiness. Again, this is what I go on about a lot, is that what is the whole purpose of this? It's like, what is the purpose of us looking at who we are, the Who Am I podcast that we do? And for me, again, is to find out again who we are so we understand how to be happy. And this topic, acceptance, letting go, these kind of things, surrendering to things internally, yeah, like we have to, well, have to is a strong word. We should take a look inside, or could take a look inside ourselves and change that behavior. Think about what it is that is internally causing us to be unhappy, because that's what it'll bring. It'll just bring unhappiness.
So yeah, that sounds like analyzing yourself.
Yeah.
And that's what I've been doing for many years, maybe my whole life.
Yeah.
You know, my intellect is my strength, and also a huge hurdle, because analyzing things logically can be the biggest block
Yes.
from going forward.
That's a good, fascinating, good point. So again, the emotional response can be damaging, but so can the analytical, I guess, logic, intelligent response. So it's interesting, because I did think about this earlier before the podcast, and maybe it's a bit too much at this point, who knows, but I'll just say it anyway, is duality and multiplicity are two terms that I kind of have learned to fall in love with, because it appears that our nature is that we must believe that we can only think in a single way. There is only okay, I believe this is right or this is wrong, and that's it. There's no leeway things. I respond in this way or that way, and that is it. It's a one way. And wherever over the years, I've noticed that I seem to think in a duality, and I'm trying to make it a multiplicity. So, for example, the emotional and logical response happens inside me. So again, emotional response starts to kick in. I stop it, use a logical response to analyze, and then I go, okay, accept. Like, that's the stage that I feel that I'm at, is that acceptance that these are how I feel. Can I do it? Is it right to do anything about this? These responses healthy? Sometimes yes, sometimes no. And then go, okay, cool. I'll accept this and just do it. The action response. And so at any given time, I can think one way, depending on the specific situation. Another time, think another way.
Yeah, let's go through that again slower.
Yep.
You feel something bad, then you realize that's not productive.
Yeah.
And you said you stop it.
It's instantaneous response. Yeah.
Oh, so it's even automatic. That's great.
Now, in the past, it hasn't been. Again, you know, it's a development process. I used to always be an emotional response first. That was like in terms of, and that was it, and that took over. And then days later, I would analyze and feel upset, and then try and get the logic involved, and then probably not be able to.
Yeah, I remember being a lot more judgmental automatically to every situation. Yes. Well, if that person is suffering, then he must be doing something wrong. He must be a bad person. You know, some belief just kicks in automatically, and you make whatever you perceive fit the concept that you have about that situation. Okay, but you can become aware. You can stop that automatic. Oh, well, my example was actually automatic thinking, but automatic feeling is what comes first, I guess. So then you said you stop that, then you think and analyze, and then you said you accept. But in between analyzing and accepting, I think there's a step as well, because you need to stop analyzing in order to accept, right?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Okay, I was just making sure that that's not the same.
I guess letting it go, and then it leads to acceptance. So process A, process B, so emotion or logic, and then vice versa, and then able to just go, you know what? Both these things don't need to happen. This is what it is. This is just the reality of my situation. So that learns to let it go, releasing that internal. It's almost like, again, it feels like it's releasing. It's letting out an internal energies that I guess hold me back. It feels like, and once I just accept it and go, okay, it's just the way it is. Just do it.
On this podcast, we are pretty rational, I would say. We analyze a lot, but that's not the goal, is it? That's not the solution to everything.
No.
I once read a book, a self-help book called "You Are Not Your Brain," And I've never believed, like, like a lot of Western scientists do, that your brain is like, so that there is only material and everything is made up of molecules, and so every thought you have is your brain, and you are your brain. I've never had that. I grew up religiously. That's one example why I don't have the materialistic view, that we believe we also have a spirit. But I personally, have my own philosophy about how thinking works, and that it is a non-material thing, and that it correlates with brain activity, and it goes back and forth. Material can cause non-material things to happen, and vice versa. There's a give and take there. What was I getting? Oh, so the book is called "You Are Not Your Brain," and that's a huge epiphany for many. I read it just to help me to realize, what goes on when your brain is trying to take control of you, which is the case with pretty much every mental illness. So there's something that is, I am not there. There's me and my brain. You know how we say my,
Yes.
which means it belongs to me. That also means it is not me. So it is kind of attached to me, kind of like my body is attached to me, but it is not me.
Yeah.
And then I was reminded of that because I want to read a book by Eckhart Tolle, and one of the chapters in there is called "You Are Not Your Thoughts." And I thought, wow, this is the next level.
Yeah.
So
Well, it's
I'm not
consciousness, I think, is that what they call it? It's consciousness,
right.
like your spirit, and then your soul in those terms. And
Yeah.
then you have your thoughts. And I saw things recently about like like you again controlling the brain in the sense that your self, your who you are, obviously can control your brain. Your brain will do things like irrational thoughts, or I guess what we call irrational thoughts, or whatever, those kind of things. And over time, yes, you can train your brain, like as a soul, spirit, consciousness, whatever you want to call it.
But it's common to believe that you are your thoughts,
Yes,
right? So
yes,
I'm
it is.
thinking, I'm feeling, I'm experiencing, and that is me. But that's not true either.
Yeah,
You need to go even further, and that's the whole thing with you have this whole conceptual framework about your identity, about the world, how you interact with the world, and it doesn't even have to be a material or non-material thing. It's just thoughts. No matter what medium carries those thoughts. You're not that either.
No,
you are something beyond
that
material and thought. So this is a progression of our podcast. Who am I?
Yeah, and I think that's really good, important to have had this like little chat about that, because I often wonder if people, if they listen to this, will think that we're always on the favor of logic and thought, because we do often swing towards that. And like the answer is no, because again, like we talk about that because of the experiences we've had and how we go through life, have gone through life. But I think I would assume we both agree that emotions are important. Like they're what make us human. Like that's what's beautiful about life, is that we can feel. It's not what we do, it's how we do things. So when we feel, how do we go about using those feelings? And that kind of stuff.
Yeah, we change personally, and so does the perspective of our discussions. Okay, to get back to acceptance, when we think, we have an expectation of how things should be, but we can choose to accept as they are. And I remember it was just a few weeks ago when I said on the podcast, I don't get it. I don't understand what these spiritual teachers are trying to say when they say that you can become free by surrendering. To me, that sounds like giving up, or becoming a slave.
Not caring.
Letting other people take control over me. That's what I associate with surrender.
Yeah.
But what do we mean today by surrendering? Can you give us some examples?
Yep, sorry, it's lagging a little bit there. So I mean, talked about a little bit earlier on. I guess pride. Pride is a massive thing. Ego, arrogance. These states of being are what cause us to. I mean, even traumas, experiences, fears. They give us, and you talked about it earlier, expectation of how things should be, what we feel things should be, what we think things should be, and that leads to a struggle internally with what is the way things should be. We've talked about it before in the podcast, and those expectations, if they are not met, they cause conflict, because internal conflict, which means that we are hurting ourselves. We are feeling and thinking in painful ways because things aren't the way we want. They need to be this way. They should be this way. And we get angry or emotional or upset or afraid. And that leads to unhappiness.
So you're saying expecting is the opposite of accepting, right?
I would think so. It has. I don't know the exact correlation, but it definitely has a correlation.
Yeah, I can think of two metaphors. So one is an expectation is a concept in your head about how the world, let's say, should be, and then a perception comes of the world, some signal from the world, and it comes into through your senses, and it clashes with your expectation, and then
that's a good way. Yeah,
you feel pain because you're now at odds with the world.
Yeah,
and all other kinds of logical consequences of that, like it could lead all the way to death, like I like to say. And then having an empty head, so having no concept of what the world should be like, means that when that signal from the world comes into you, there's nothing there to fight against it. You just observe. You just receive the signal, you don't fight it. And I guess that's what we mean by accepting, just allowing things to be.
Yes. That phrase there, things to be, is an amazing concept. Just being, just existing in the now, that sort of extension of what was called mindfulness into meditation, into enjoying the moment. Because when we think about past, future, that's often where the expectation comes in, because we want it to be better than our past. We want it to be better in the future, or again, all different kind of concepts being mixed into the bowl here. But if we just, as you say, observe and think of it as an interesting thing, think of it as a fascinating thing, think of whatever's happening to be a beautiful thing, then it is liberating. It's so liberating. And then we can, choose the responses to those things over time. Like again, it's that we talked about before quite a lot. It's that initial reaction that's so important. Those first 5 seconds of any experience is paramount to our happiness.
The second metaphor I had on my mind was, all right, I just heard this from Alan Watts, a British philosopher. He said, you're standing in a river, or I don't know how deep it is, but you're in a river, and it streams, and it's pretty fast, and it's like the stream of life. It just happens, right? It just keeps flowing. There's constant change. There's no stability, and you're in the middle of it, and you have nothing to hold on to, and you're fighting against this huge river just flowing past you, and because you are desperately longing for stability, because you believe that's the only way to be safe, or lots of different reasons you might have for you need things to be constant so that there's predictability and reliability in your life. Otherwise there's chaos and death, and things are out of control. And so you are doing everything you can, and you're missing the whole adventure that is possible by just letting the river stream and going along with it. And again, that might sound like you're giving up control, This is at least my fear that I'm overcoming slowly, gradually.
Yeah.
But change is natural and unavoidable.
Yeah. That's where I mean, you mentioned the control then, that's really important, is that we do feel this need to control everything, or some things. And I think this links in a way to what I was talking about earlier about the duality and multiplicity of ways of thinking, is that you can do both. So you can accept things and go with the flow. I can never get the pronunciation right, but I think it's Wu Wei. And it's a Buddhist Chinese philosophy that it talks about this, so going like natural flow. But you can also do that while fighting for your goals. So let's say you want, as beings, we need purpose often. We need to feel accomplished, we need achievements. And maybe the ultimate goal is to not need that. Maybe that's to not need that. Maybe that's complete acceptance. I don't know. But then I feel like I'm not doing anything. I've stagnated in terms of my external. So this is the interesting thing, is that internal, I feel great. I feel happy. I feel at peace. I feel serene. But at the end of the day, we are living in a perceived physical world, and we have to get money to pay for food. We have to get clothing, shelter, roof over our heads, and then other goals, like trying to help people. And so how do we do that? How do we do both? How do you accept all these things and not fight again, or not struggle against the current, but also achieve those things? And I think that's the difficult thing that a lot of us, I guess Western culture especially, I'm not very experienced with other cultures, because we are taught from day one to compete, to get certificates, to get grades, to get pay rises, to get promotions, to get a house, to get cars, to do all these things. And at no point do we really get properly taught about, again, the internal. When we don't get those things, what happens when we get those things and they're taken away from us through health or other things. And that's the kind of acceptance I think that we're kind of going with, is the internal, that no matter what external situation happens to me as an individual, will I choose to be happy internally? So and then still fight if you want to. Again, for example, doing this podcast, doing my book stuff, doing board game things that I do. They're all means towards hopefully one day finding a way to have a job or earn money from these things. But if I never achieve those things, if from now until the day I die, whether it's tomorrow or in 50 years' time, am I happy with this? Am I happy that this is what I have? Yeah. I consider myself rich. Again, perspective is a massive important thing on acceptance, I think. What are your thoughts about that?
Yeah. One of the things you mentioned is acceptance is not apathy, right? It's not like we do nothing because everything is just fine the way it is. No, obviously.
I use a phrase sometimes that I don't care. And I don't mean that I don't care as in I don't care emotionally. I do care emotionally, but I'm not affected by. Yeah.
So let's see if we can resolve this conundrum, because it might seem at first that accepting things the way they are means doing nothing about them. But actually, when you accept things the way they are, and that includes you yourself, you're then able to be more passionate about what you do. It actually gives you more energy and more hunger to do something, either lessen what is bad in the world or increase what is good in the world. And that is because nothing is blocking you. So the only thing that was blocking you before was inside of yourself. And by learning to accept things, you've gotten rid of that. And what I was saying earlier about getting an empty head, that is what I mean by nothing is blocking you. Your body and your subconscious and, I don't know, the whole universe is constantly trying to make things better, to heal your body, to improve your relationships, to improve your financial state, to bring harmony to everything and everyone. And what is hindering it? You with your thoughts.
Yep. That's probably one of the first steps is taking responsibility. I really struggle. I used to be like this myself, but I really struggle with victim behavior.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's obviously extreme circumstances, but we're talking about general day-to-day things where like, oh, this always happens to me. This is like you're always trying to blame something else. Like the victim, play the victim card. So like go outside and the car breaks down. Now that's just a random circumstance that could happen. But it's like, oh, it was the mechanic's fault or whatever's
Mm-hmm.
fault. It doesn't have to be fault ultimately, actually. Just take responsibility of yourself and go, okay, well, this needs to be fixed, blah, blah. Otherwise, you get caught up in, I guess what we're talking about here is you defeat yourself before you even started because you're lost in all these, again, blaming mentality and just inner thoughts and feelings that hold you back. So you're more effective if you don't have those. If those are gone, if those inner conflicts, inner need to control, if you just accept a situation, you can then go, okay, well now I can take that energy and put it into something that is I guess more effective towards your happiness.
Yeah. One example for a counterproductive thought or belief is something that causes you to stay poor, or just not rich, and your subconscious will do anything to make what you believe true, because that's the relationship between you and your subconscious. What was I getting at? So if you have a belief like, oh, money is bad, or I'm not good enough to make money, or there are tons of other possibilities, then you will, what's the word? You will sabotage anything that could make you more
self-fulfilling
prosperous.
prophecies. Yep,
Mm-hmm.
self-fulfilling prophecies are a massive thing amongst human beings.
And so when you say take responsibility for your beliefs and your thoughts, even though they are subconscious, then how do you do that? Since you cannot get to them directly, you need to kind of infer what they are from your circumstances, right?
Yeah.
So if every time I try to become self-employed and get a project going, something blocks me, I, for example, cut off ties to people I could have worked with, or I get tired, I get a headache. It could be anything. It could be physical or emotional. Then after some time, I might think, something's going on here that I'm not aware of. So what could it be? And then we go back to analyzing.
Yes.
But today is not about analyzing. So yeah, this reminds me of another big point I was trying to get at. Understanding what your internal processes is great, but it will not be enough to solve your inner problems. And this is a strategy I've just been trying to apply recently. Just do not try to understand everything and to solve it logically.
It highlights things, but it doesn't change them. That's the internal things. And then once you feel them and experience them, learn to love them. That's what's the fascinating thing. So we try to change these internal things that we have, but once you highlight them, learn to be like, okay, this is just part of me.
Mm-hmm.
And over time, it naturally changes. I personally believe that if you had that confidence in yourself and that belief in yourself and that love in these things, that just the universe itself will give you circumstances that will allow you just to change naturally.
Yeah, and I've been starting to experience that recently. If you do not insist on being able to get to the answer through thoughts and analysis, then let life work through you, and you will learn from it through that process.
Yeah.
It will happen naturally. So it's really interesting. You might think, but how can I solve a problem by ignoring it, right? This is how some people might be interpreting what I'm saying.
Yeah.
You don't really ignore it. you acknowledge that it exists. So with the situation with the garbage bin, a conflict happened. You allow it to happen. You don't feel the need to change that it has happened or that it will ever happen again. Secondly, your automatic negative feeling as a response or as a reaction to that situation is also an involuntary automatic thing that you need to allow. So you allow the situation, you allow your reaction to it, and then you're able to not feel that, I don't know, tension, whatever it may have been, or the need to do something about it. You're able to transcend it, you might say.
Yeah. Yep.
So, and that is not suppressing it or ignoring it. That is not trying to solve it or understand it. It is just acknowledging it, basically.
Yeah.
And that is enough, because then over time, you will find a solution almost naturally, automatically.
Yeah. Well, the solution is itself what you said. It's like, because let's say the same situation happens again where you forget to take the bins out. Of course you might do that. Like that's going to happen. Like that's life. We're human beings. We don't always remember everything. We're not perfect. We're not these robots that can just have infinite amount of memory space that can allow us to therefore remember how we should behave, inverted commas, in any given circumstance. So just again doing naturally is what will again lead to happiness within ourselves, because there'll be a peace. Like peace and serenity are very important to me, because again we talk about conflict, we talk about those inner things that happen, and I think once we start accepting things, there is less conflict and more peace and more serenity, and to me that is a state of happiness. That's a state of healthy, like health. And again, going back to expectations a little bit and wants, that's another route to, again, disappointment and internal pains. Is we talked about riches and stuff. If you believe you're not good enough to make money or to or good enough to just do things, then you won't do them. But you might not want to. Like you might know that you can. For example, let's say like an example, someone has an amazing set of skills, uses them as a hobby, knows they could go into a job career thing to make lots of money that way, but doesn't want to, just chooses not to. Like that's, again, we each individually have the free will and parameters to set for ourselves. You know, we choose what is our goals, our purposes in life. Everything is internal. It's once you start wrapping your head around that concept, that it's all about perspective and what is internal that leads to our happiness. Because if we raise those expectations too high, or having the expectations, leads to disappointment. If we just go, well, I want that goal, and have no expectations, so, well, whether I achieve it or not, I don't mind. Doesn't matter to me. I'm just doing it. Then if it doesn't go to plan, cool. Okay, try a different route to get to that same thing, or try something else. There's like, it's all, again, it's you choosing how you perceive any given situation. And that takes time. Like again, it's not natural. This is, again, we're not like, again, I'm not preaching as if I have mastered this. I, on a daily basis, have to come back to it and keep revising, keep making sure I don't slip back into old patterns. Because I was again, taking a bit of a personal route. What do they call them? Is it high achievers? Like people that just want to like I was obsessed with grades and certificates and stuff at high school. Like I loved that feeling of being, I achieved this.
Mm-hmm.
And it was partly without realizing, it's probably because I felt I was better than other people, but it wasn't my intention. It's just I liked that feeling of doing well and succeeding in the world's view. And again, it wasn't until that was stripped away from me that I realized actually it's a load of like nonsense. Like, and it's nice to have, again, if you want to go down that path, of course, everyone can go down that path. But again, ultimately, it's, to me personally, it's superficial, because I've seen I guess, what's the right terminology here? A bigger perspective, I guess. You can't put all your faith and trust in, I guess, is probably a good way of doing it. Because again, I still want to achieve those things. I would still love to go out, go do a master's degree and get a good grade in it, or go back to university to do something and achieve those same things. But it wouldn't bother me ultimately whether I did well in it or not. It would just be because I want to do that and gain that knowledge, as it were. It's same things but different perspectives, I guess is probably what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, we have this instinct to want to understand the process that leads to the goal.
Yes.
So, for example, a career, I have to have good grades in school so that I get nice certificates, so that employers will be impressed when they see me, so that I get a job, so that I have the money that I need to, I don't know, buy a house, for example.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so when I have that plan and other people tell me it's possible, and I've seen them do it, then I feel confident. And then life happens and nothing happens the way you planned it.
Yeah.
And so
Well then.
that, and for some people plans do work out. And so you might be stuck in that belief that that is how life works, because some people get rich and,
Yeah.
without struggling to get there. And so you might think that can happen to me as well. I want that. But no, you can just allow things to work out without struggling for them to be so. You by trying to force something to work out the way you planned it, yes, you can achieve something. It has happened. It
Yeah.
doesn't always happen, but there is a better way to achieve things, and that includes not knowing every step, not understanding the process, maybe not even knowing the goal. Just allowing life to take you to amazing adventures without knowing and understanding them before.
Yeah. And
I,
those adventures most likely have nothing to do with money, because the universe doesn't pay its way in money. Money is a human concept. So those experiences when meeting people, again, these feelings that we get, connections, um, community, these type of I guess what I'd call spiritual experiences, are so important. And again, at the end of the day, having money, it would be great, be able to do more things, whatever. But whatever, it that's an external thing that is just whatever. The internal thing is that we get to have connections like this podcast, like going out and I know that you do tutoring at the moment. I think a little bit of tutoring. You get to go out. You're organizing some events and stuff that you're doing. These things connect us to people, and I think with accepting who we are as a person, because that's another, I guess, aspect we haven't really talked
yeah.
about too much. We talked about acceptance of circumstances, a bit of obviously internal differences, but the specifics of who we are as a person, like trying to accept that. What's an example I can use?
Flaws.
Yeah, what were classed as flaws, weaknesses, things that call the term of that, which I now no longer think that they are.
Mm-hmm.
I don't perceive them in that way anymore. I don't like that terminologies. You can obviously sometimes see me try to avoid them sometimes, but that is the best way to define them in a popularized sense.
Sure.
But they're just parts of our character, like an anxiety or a shyness or even an overconfidence. Like sometimes now these days, I go into a group setting and I dominate the conversation or the setup, and actually that can be just as damaging as if in terms of its the connecting and the happiness aspect for everyone in that environment can be just the same as if for me as if I was being quiet and shy and didn't know what to do. because I'm not letting everyone else have their say or gain their confidence they need, kind of thing, for example. So learning to, again, accept this is who I am. And again, we go back to the analytical and the emotional responses, and we kind of get into a little loop here of then what do we do with it? What choices do we make when we kind of, I guess, start to understand who we are as a person? And if we try to fight against it, what ends up happening? Like, as we try to fight against ourselves.
Yeah, the more I go down this path, the less answers I have to questions. And I've learned to accept that my answer is often, I don't know.
Yep.
Not knowing used to feel like not having control, or, and all that stuff. But it's important to be able to admit, I don't know.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's good. Some of the stuff that we've talked about sounds a lot like the law of attraction, and I think we should do an entire episode on that concept. But I want to read something from the book Siddhartha that exemplifies what we've been talking about letting things happen or allowing things. Hermann Hesse wrote the book Siddhartha. It's a book about his life, not very thick, and there's a passage that impressed me a lot. Towards the beginning. So he started out as the son of a rich and highly looked at family in society, but he left against the wishes of his father. But he just insisted until his father let him go. He became a monk, a samana, they called it. And after some time, he was done with that too. He said, I don't want any more formal teaching. I want life to teach me. And so the next adventure he comes across, spontaneously, is a woman, and he's never been in love or any of that stuff. And he learned stuff from her, and she also from him. So this is an example of how he is applying the law of attraction. She says, I don't care who you are until you have nice shoes, nice clothes, and money. And he says, okay, like he's never cared about it. He's been a totally poor monk so far. But he says, okay, let's do that. And then she finds out that he can read and write. And he didn't realize that was highly sought after talent, because at this time in India, that was the minority of people. And so she sets up a meeting for him and a merchant called Kamaswami. She says, things are working out well. They're expecting you at Kamaswami's. He is the richest merchant of the city. If he'll like you, he will accept you into his service. Siddhartha thanked her and laughed. You've been lucky, she said when they parted. I'm opening one door after another for you, probably feeling like she's a really good friend.
She's helping out.
How come? Do you have a spell on me? Siddhartha said, yesterday I told you I know how to think, to wait, and to fast, and nothing more. He says, that's all I need in life, to think, to wait, and to fast. And that our society does not value these things at all. Well, the thinking, but I think he doesn't mean analytical thinking here. He continues, but you thought this was of no use. But it is useful for many things, Kamala, you'll see. You'll see that the stupid samanas, the monks, are learning and are able to do many pretty things in the forest, which the likes of you aren't capable of. The day before yesterday, I was still a shaggy beggar. As soon as yesterday, I have kissed Kamala, and soon I'll be a merchant and have money and all those things you insist upon. Well, yes, she admitted, but where would you be without me? What would you be if Kamala wasn't helping you? So in other words, you have no control. How can you feel safe? I knew that you would help me. At your first glance at the entrance of the grove, I already knew it. But what if I hadn't been willing? You were willing. Look, Kamala, when you throw a rock into the water, it will speed on the fastest course to the bottom of the water. This is how it is when Siddhartha has a goal, a resolution. Siddhartha does nothing. He waits, he thinks, he fasts, but he passes through the things of the world like a rock through water, without doing anything, without stirring. He is drawn, he lets himself fall. His goal attracts him, because he doesn't let anything enter his soul which might oppose the goal. This is what Siddhartha has learned among the samanas. This is what fools call magic. and of which they think it would be affected by means of the demons. Nothing is affected by demons. There are no demons. Everyone can perform magic. Everyone can reach his goals. If he is able to think, if he's able to wait, if he's able to fast. So he was able to accept poverty. And when he decided, I'm going to be rich, it happened to him. He didn't force it. Because there was nothing in him that could hinder him from doing whatever he decided or the universe decided. It just happened. And you might think that means that he's nothing, that he's just a cog in the wheel.
Yeah.
But, and this is another topic entirely, allowing, like, what's the word? Plugging into the stream of life and going along with this, with the current, like you said, is can be fulfilling.
Yeah.
You don't need control necessarily. Things don't have to go according to your plan for your life to be an active, fulfilling life.
Yeah, no, 100% agree. And like with these kind of like with these stories, often they are multi-layered. Like, and in the sense that it's nothing like one layer. It's that it's not about being poor, or accepting being poor, or accepting being rich. Like those things are just devices to tell a bigger story that, as you say, like what you said, it's the acceptance of what was it? Was it he said the fasting, the waiting, and the what was it
Thinking.
one? Thinking. And those things are just, yeah, like allowing things to happen in their own time is very difficult for humans. Like we've created a society, especially now, where we're obsessed with time. Time is everything. Time is money. All that kind of nonsense. And we think that like things have to happen immediately or whatever, but often it takes years, decades for these things to manifest, if they'll manifest at all. And it's again accepting to, I guess, choose the path you want, see what happens, and enjoy it. Enjoy that path. Like enjoy the moments. And then if it doesn't lead to where you think it should lead to, realize that that's okay. There will be a reason, and there'll be beautiful things on that path that have meaning. And often again, I talk about perspective and giving things meaning, and that actually it's the case as well. We choose whether we think it's a success or a failure, or if it's a good path or a bad path. Like that's up to us ultimately, and to be yeah, that's that example, that story that you just shared was really really good. It's really good to have a bit of insight into that.
I think one of the reasons that people have such an urgency to get things done by a certain time, maybe in their life, like, oh no, I haven't gotten married, or I don't have any kids yet, or I don't have a big job yet, or a certain salary or wealth or house, whatever. They have all these expectations for what to achieve by what time in their life. Is the reason is often the uncertainty and the fear that comes with death.
Yep.
Because you have this finite time on Earth, and many people believe that that is all there is to life. And
Yes.
even if you do believe that life goes on after death in a different way, then the uncertainty of what that life will be like can be enough to, make you still feel that urgency to get things done in this life. But I look forward to the things I will learn and unlearn on this path. For example, I hear about people realizing that time is an illusion and doesn't exist.
Yep.
I don't get it yet, but I look forward to being able to say that myself. The belief that there is right and wrong.
Yep.
It is possible for that to turn out to be an illusion.
Yep.
And just basically, who am I? There are so many depths to that question that we haven't even mentioned yet, because they are beyond our current understanding. But we progress personally. One generation hopefully progresses after another, and it's just exciting to be part of that process.
It is. No, I love it, and I love that we get to talk about it together. Like to me, that's special. Like getting that connection that you and I, out of 7 billion people on this planet, just get to have our chats about these kind of things, and we hope that our listeners enjoy these chats too.